Welcome, everybody. We're here with Craig Hentrich, who is a 17-year NFL veteran, all pro, and alum of Notre Dame. We are in the middle of the college football playoff season. And last night, we watched an incredible game between Notre Dame and Penn State. Tie game, comes down to the end, takes a Notre Dame kicker to send them into overtime. To win the game. And I just thought it would be fun to get on, talk with Craig about the game, his thoughts about the kicker. And Craig, I would just like to start with, as a Notre Dame alum, watching that game, what did it mean to you? What were your thoughts?
Well, it's been a long time coming. First of all, I think 2013 they played for the championship against Alabama and lost pretty handily. And prior to that, it was 1988 was their last championship. I happened to go to Notre Dame in '89, which was the year after they won the national championship. So it's been a long time for Notre Dame, and it's been a great run this year. We had the hiccup early on with Northern Illinois, but ever since then we've run the table. And last night was just an incredible game. It was just so much fun to watch, and it ended exactly the way we wanted it to.
So you mentioned 89 was the last time they won the national championship.
88.
88, I'm sorry. And you were there in 89,
That's right.
and that was Lou Holtz as head coach, correct?
Yes.
That must have been quite an experience. I'm sure you've got a lot of great stories from that.
I do have a lot of stories. He aside from my father, he was probably one of the biggest influences in my life.
Do you
He's
have
the
one? Go
that
ahead.
you
Sorry.
go to school there, and you go there as a boy, and you leave there as a man. And he's the one that made us that way. And I learned so much about football, about life, about perspective, about overcoming adversity. He was just an incredible coach and an incredible mentor to me.
Do you have one Lou Holtz story you want to share?
See, I was kicking at practice one day, and I had a pretty rough game, I guess, the game before, and so every time in practice, I would make everything. And he looked at me one day, and in his Lou Holtz lisp during practice, and I'm making all these kicks, and he called me Greg Heinrich. He said, "Greg Heinrich, you're nothing but a practice kicker." So that was my one of my favorite Lou Holtz stories, and one I remember because that really motivated me to become that much more mentally tough in the games as just opposed to practice.
I love your response to that. No whining, just like, I'm going to show you. And if you didn't catch that, for people who are listening, his last name is Hentrich. So to call him Heinrich was probably intentional. He was probably, who knows what he was trying to do, but it must have worked because you had a great career.
He
All
had
right,
his
let's go ahead.
he had his reasons. Everything was for a purpose with him.
So let's go back to the game. And what a great back and forth game. First half, I thought Penn State was going to win. I thought they looked like clearly the better team. They were more physical. They were only able to get 10 points out of it. But, at halftime, it was clear Notre Dame was going to have to do something. Notre Dame comes out and it completely shifts. They end up tying the game. And as you're watching this game, I guess I want to know, as a kicker, as somebody who has obviously intimate knowledge of what that's like, are you ever thinking like, oh, they may have to kick a field goal to tie it or win it? And do you have any sort of connection with the person on the sideline?
Yeah, well, those kind of games, you basically mentally prepare the week before. You prepare knowing it's probably going to be a close game, and then every kick counts. And this is even an extra points too. So you have that mentality going into a game that I'm going to make a difference today, and really it all comes down to confidence. It all comes down to execution, doing what you've practiced, and not being scared of the moment.
Do you do you do you get triggered at all when you're watching these games, thinking about that sort of thing, like back in the moment, emotions come?
Well, I definitely relive a lot of memories. I went through a lot of those situations, and I relive those and relish those memories that I have of those situations, and how I was able to perform in them. And yeah, I'm really really proud of the kicker that made it last night. He's been getting kind of a rough go because he had kind of a rough start to a year, and I think he got injured mid season. And Kind of had a not very good statistically, but he's really come through for him in the playoffs, and I'm really proud of him.
So I'm glad you mentioned that because I was not aware of that. I heard last night on the broadcast they mentioned that when he was injured, until he got healthy, they were, correct me if I'm wrong, but statistically, I think the worst kicking team in the nation. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe they were right around 50% for makes versus misses.
Wow. So that's got to be, I mean, that's got to take some real mental toughness to fight through that.
It does, and like I said before, Coach Holtz. One of the things he preached to me, and one of the things I really took away from him being my coach, he told me one day. He said, pressure is a feeling you get when you're not confident in your abilities. So if you really think about that a little deeper, there really is no pressure in that situation if you've practiced the way you're going to play. If you're confident in your kick and you're confident in your holding, your snapper, and your line, it's really just another kick. And so the goalpost doesn't get any narrower in that situation. The rush still comes the same. It's just you executing what you've done thousands of times before. And that's the mentality that you have to take into that situation.
So I want to pause here before we go back to the game. And I just want to ask you, since I have you, is there a moment in your career where you remember feeling the most pressure or the most where you were asked to punt or kick or do something and that 2 minutes before you had to go out there and do it was the most butterflies you ever felt?
Yes, well, there's two situations. One was kicking off in my first Super Bowl. Super Bowl is a bigger than life game growing up, and here I am getting ready to do the opening kickoff for Super Bowl 31. That's probably the most nervous I've ever been in any situation. But I can remember another instance where I had to go in and kick fields. I was the punter in Tennessee at the time, and our kicker, who was Joe Nedney, was got hurt in the first half, and I had to go in and kick field goals for him for the rest of the game. And this was a Monday night game, so it was on national TV. And right before half, we had a chance to kick. I think it was a 48-yard field goal or something like that. And I remember Coach Fisher, our head coach at the time in Tennessee, told me, he said, "Go out there and make this thing." So I went out and I was able to make the 48-yarder, kick two more in the second half, and we won by, I think, 3 or 4 points. So that's probably the game that I'm most proud of, and I was able to go out and really do my job to the best of my abilities. And it's weird because after that first kick, I knew the next ones were going in. It's all about the confidence thing.
I love that. It's all about the confidence. And by the way, I forgot to mention when I introduced you that your career, through the span of your career, you've done kickoffs, field goals, and punting, which makes you kind of a unicorn in the kicking world, especially at the professional level.
Yeah, and I think that's what kept me in the league for as long as it did, because I was able to take on these other jobs. And I also took a lot of pride in being the holder for field goals when the kicker was out there. And so being able to do all those jobs really increases your value as a player for your team.
All right, so let's go back now. I'm watching this game last night, and Notre Dame has the ball. They're driving. They get stopped. I forget how much time was left, something like a minute maybe.
Hmm.
And they have to punt it. Penn State takes the ball, runs once, I think, and then Drew Aller, heart goes out to him. Don't wish it on anybody, but he throws a pick.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're going wild, right? But I think when they took the ball, Notre Dame had the ball somewhere around midfield. I don't remember exactly where, but close enough that it was, and there's only 35 seconds left, something like
Some,
that.
yeah.
So at this point, what I'm curious about is, as somebody who isn't just a kicker, but kicked for Notre Dame and is aware of the history this season that we talked about for this young man. What's his name?
I, I'm not sure.
I can't believe I don't know his name. Anyway,
Sorry,
is
I don't.
is aware of the history for this kicker.
Mhm.
What were you thinking anything? I mean, I didn't even I wasn't really thinking about kicking. I was just watching the game. But are you starting to think about how this kid must feel?
Yes, but the thing that I realized is that he made a big field goal earlier in the game. I think right before halftime to give him the first 3 points. And when you make a kick like that in that situation, I think it was the last play of the half or whatever it was. Again, that confidence thing comes in. I just made this kick a couple hours ago, and so what makes this game-ending kick any different than the one at the first half? And so that's what I was thinking for him. I knew that confidence, just being there and being in that moment myself. I knew that confidence from that first kick was really going to help him in that final kick.
And so he's over there, you're over there like all kickers do, kicking into the net,
Mm-hmm.
probably, I don't know, reciting positive stuff in your mind. Just as I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you're just visualizing every time you kick that ball, it's going through, it's going through.
Yeah, and it's the power of the mind is amazing. I mean, you see even kickers in the NFL when they get in a slump, it's all mental. They know how to kick the ball through the uprights. That's what they do for a living. But something mentally, there's a mental block that makes them miss. And when they get in a slump, that's what happens. It has nothing to do with their technique or their ability. It's all in the mind. And so the power of the mind is amazing.
All right. So they get Notre Dame moves the ball down. I think there was 7 or 8 seconds left. Obviously, it becomes clear now
Hmm.
that this is the play, right? They're going to kick a
Yep.
field goal. It's tied.
Hmm.
And this young man trots out there again. What are you thinking? And I'm asking as the reason it's relevant, the reason it matters, because you were a kicker, you were a great kicker, and you kicked at Notre Dame. And so that's the thing that's interesting to me, that it's a completely unique perspective on what's actually going on. So I just love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, in that situation, the first thing I would have thought about, and of course, I'm not in this young man's mind, but I would have thought about, okay, are they going to try to, I guess, ice the kicker is what they say. They're going to try to use their timeouts to make him think about it a little more, which, by the way, is totally helps the kicker. So I would never do that as a coach. So then you just start going through your routine. You run out on the field, you get your spot. Nothing changes from practice that you did the week before to that kick, except for obviously you're in a game situation. So really, you're just executing what you've done hundreds of times that week. And so that's the way I thought about it when I went out there. And I'm hoping that's the way he thought about it too.
And for you personally, though, sitting in that chair, I mean, there has to be a level of empathy that none
Well, the
of us can relate to.
only time I ever get nervous because I don't have any control over it anymore. So that's what
That's what I'm looking for right there.
I felt. I felt for him, the pressure part of it. But I was hoping he would think the way I would think.
Uh-huh. Well, he clearly did. He clearly
He
did. You should reach out to that young man. I'm sure he would appreciate hearing from somebody like you.
Well, I
And
would love to talk to him and congratulate him and tell him how proud of him I am of him. And when we get, it's not over yet though. We got one more big game. We're going to find out who we play tonight. Um, Ohio State looks awful good right now, and so they're probably the favorites. But you never know what happens.
yeah, I agree with you. I think Ohio State, I mean, I'm sure for most of the people that end up watching this it will probably be after that game's played, but I gotta believe it's going to be Ohio State. And either way, it's going to be a huge deal for Notre Dame, who, by the way, as an independent, keeps all the money for the college football playoff. How great is that?
It, like they need more, right?
Well, I mean, I'll send them my bank account number.
There you
Maybe
go.
they can peel off some.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Well, Craig, thank you for the time. I just really appreciate getting to hear your perspective and hear how a kicker thinks, and to be in your shoes, not just going back in time, but real time, watching this young man do this. And I wanted to, before we go, I just want to ask, I know you're working now with a lot of kickers. Tell me about what you're doing.
Well, I have so much stuff in my head over the 30 plus years I've been kicking footballs that I really wanted to help the younger generation of kickers out. And so what I've ended up doing is creating an app, and it's Master Your Punting and Kicking. It's an MPK app that you can get on your iPhone or Android off the App Store. And basically what it does is it takes you through my experiences and my knowledge of kicking and punting both, step by step, breaks it down into simpler terms. Because what people don't realize, it's not just going out there and kicking a ball. There's a lot of things that go on with your body and a lot of intricacies that people don't really think about. And so what I've done is I broke that down into step-by-step teaching modules on my app, that's hopefully going to allow punters and kickers to experience the same kind of life that I've experienced, which is my dreams came true, playing in the Super Bowl, playing in the NFL, and I want that for those guys too.
All right. So if they want to work with you, or if there's a young kicker out there, go on to either Android or Apple, download MPK, right?
MPK, Master Your Punting and Kicking.
Master Your Punting and Kicking. And is there a way for them to contact you directly through the app if they want to work more closely?
Yes, there is everything. It takes you right through the app, takes you step by step through everything. Not even just the kicking and punting modules, but also how to contact me and how to get, if you want personalized lessons or anything like that. Everything's on the app, so you should be able to navigate that fairly simply.
Well, I love that you've taken the time to share the knowledge that you have with all of the young athletes that are coming up that have dreams and hopes, and I know you're having a huge positive impact. So good on you for doing that. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Hentrich, thank you so much for being with us. And maybe after the Natty, if Notre Dame pulls it off, we'll do one more follow-up. How about that?
I would love that, and hopefully we'll get that game-winning kick again.
All right. Thank you.